So, hello, 2024 Siminovitch Prize finalists.
Hello.
Hello.
We've got Itai in Vancouver. We've got Sonoyo in Montreal. We've got the Trouts, Judd, P2, and Pete. And we've got Deb in Toronto. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you.
So, you've known for about a month that you have been selected as the shortlist for Canada's top theatre prize. But you just found out yesterday that who the other finalists are. So just to start it off, I want to know, how does it feel to be recognized by your peers as groundbreaking Canadian theater designers who should be recognized on this national platform?
It's wonderful. Feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great honor.
Humbling. A lot of our, greatest heroes are on that laureate list, and so it's that's a pretty amazing cohort.
Yeah.
Even in the approach.
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah. It looks like you two actually got a haircut. So I have to say, it is life changing.
So you've all been asked to prepare some thoughts on two specific questions. One, theater design and what's most important in theater design right now. And two, how does theater design help an audience understand a work or a play? We're here to talk about design, and I thought maybe we just go through it alphabetically. Itai, if you don't mind kicking us off, the idea is for you to give some remarks, and then the other finalists will have a chance to respond.
I find that in lighting design, the most important thing is flexibility. Because every project is so different. And unlike set designers, costume designers, and composers, we're asked to be creative under pressure. So I can prepare as best I can. Once I get to the theater, everything changes. And so we have to adapt to every director has a different vision. Every set design offers different challenges. Lighting a big musical is completely different than lighting a Greek tragedy, which is completely different than lighting a naturalistic play. So the requirements are just so vastly different. It's almost like a different profession. And so I would say for lighting, certainly flexibility, I said, was the most important thing. I can expand a little bit about the differences if you want, but that's sort of my general answer to the question. Would you like me to expand? Yeah.
I would.
Like me to expand? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, okay. So, absolutely. So, for instance, when lighting a naturalistic play, usually you don't want to notice the lights. You don't want to see the lights. And so I would use very long cues that would affect the viewer subliminally. And you would notice that things are changing, or you wouldn't notice. But say I would have a 5-minute cue that changes everything from warm to cold. And then you would feel in the back of your head like something is getting eerie and scary, but you wouldn't know why, or you couldn't see it ever. And that's how naturalistic theater works. Whereas with dance or abstract theater, a lot of times I would have snaps. And so the lighting is very obviously changed because you don't have to justify everything you do in dance or in abstract theater like you do in naturalism. In naturalism, if there is a window, light has to come through the window or it looks weird. In a dance piece, I can bring the light from every place I want and I don't have to justify anything. And so that's one way that those things are very different. But also lighting for proscenium is so different than lighting in a round or lighting in a corridor. So the physical requirements of the theater dictate what I do. Because I love lighting theater like dance. So I use a lot of side lights and a lot of backlights. And I try to use as little front lights as I possibly can. And that can be very challenging in the round, for instance, where you can't use any side lighting because you're going to blind the audience from everywhere you go. So, yeah, that's sort of a bit of expansion on the flexibility for lighting design.
Great. Any thoughts on what Itai's shared?
the thing you mentioned about pressure, I'm usually across the aisle from the lighting designer. And as I'm sure all of you know, but maybe the people watching this video don't know, lighting design on comms have their own channel because they're constantly talking. There's always something to do. This up, that down, sneak, enter, which is my favorite thing ever. Just fills me with delight every time somebody says sneak, enter. But there's always this constant work to refine and refine and refine. And frankly, I don't know how Sonoyo and Itai, I don't know why you don't have ulcers or heart conditions, because listening to you do your work, because you can only do it when you're there. Listening to you do your work is, to me, I have so much respect for you. And also I am absolutely terrified of watching you do that tightrope thing. It's amazing to me. And that flexibility and that spontaneity, I just wanted to give you a shout out, because
Thank you.
every time I'm in a play or in a theater and I'm sitting across the aisle from the lighting designer, I'm just thinking, thank God it's not me, because I would not last 5 seconds. Swear to God.
Yeah, because we can't actually prepare for everything before we get in theater, you know. So the time is always limited for lighting designer. So that's why we have to keep on going, you know.
That's why also I think it's important to be versatile and to have lots of options. And so when I watch rehearsals, I have ideas of how I would like to light a scene, but I don't determine anything. And so when I sit with the director in tech, I can say, we can do this. And if you don't like that, then we can do this. And if you don't like that, we can do this. I also always have 3 or 4 or 5 options of how to light something, because you never know if the director is going to like what you have to offer. And so that's why it's important to have lots of flexibility and never to be married to anything, never to predetermine anything, but to be able to just go with it. And that's the other thing I love about lighting design, is that I can do something that was an accident, like you don't intend. You can, point, but if it looks good, then it's good. It doesn't matter what your plan was. And so it's so important to just go with it. And yeah.
If you're coming in with 3 or 4 options, how do you decide what to put forward first?
I always do what I like. I offer what I like the most. And then what I like the least, I offer last. Yeah.
One of my favorite moments in our shows is actually when what we've designed meets the lighting, because we're working with colors and textures that just come to life and are made exactly the way they're intended to be up there at that moment. It's like, oh, those work under those conditions so much better than I could have even imagined.
I wonder, rather than going to Sonoyo next as lighting to lighting, could we go to you, Deb, next to give us a perspective on sound?
Oh, I thought it was going to be alphabetical. Okay, I'm good. I can do this. So, what's important in your discipline? So I've been thinking a lot about this. So it's different, of course, because I work with sound and music. So I have the opportunity, as opposed to Itai and Sonoyo, to do a lot of the work beforehand in my studio with the director, even online, sharing music and sounds. But as cliche as it sounds, the most important thing in my discipline is to listen. And I want to talk about that because I'm not talking about listening to the music and listening to the sound in the space. Of course, I'm talking about that because that's what we do. We listen to it. But I think what's been kind of revealed to me as I work through theater and work with different collaborators and in different processes is I'm kind of realizing that the listening to the outcomes of the work that I do in the space, the music, the sound cues, whatever, is intimately tied to the listening I've done beforehand. And I suspect that everything I say applies to everybody here. Because when I talk about the listening beforehand, I'm talking about the listening to the conversations that the directors have with the actors, the conversations the directors have with me, and the conversations I have with myself as I try to discover the limits or the frame of the sound world of the play. Because like everyone that works in theater on this call, certainly, every play requires a different kind of listening. And there are ways to listen that reveal the thing that the moment requires. And I think that practice is the practice that I find most exciting. And the reason why I think I stay curious and excited about theater is because it requires me to listen in different ways every time. And that listening reveals different things. Because if I was listening in the same way and the same things were getting revealed to me, my sound designs would be completely the same. But I feel pretty strongly that they shouldn't be, and hopefully they're not, because every moment requires a different listening. That means every moment has a different result in a way. And so to me, that when I think about my discipline, sound and music, the thing that's most important is listening. And as I say all that, I realize as soon as I finish talking, all of you are going to say, yeah, totally. That's the most important thing in my discipline too. I totally hear that. And I think that's what theater offers us. It offers us a space in which we can listen and practice the process of listening, and then to take that practice and then be better in the world, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. But
I told you.
What I was going to say is about I find that lighting is particularly magical with sounds. And so the combination between sound and lights is what, when I have a lighting cue and the violins kick in, that's when people start crying. And so it's the often if I designed a dance piece and I cannot connect to the choreography, I close my eyes and I design to the music, because the choreographer also listens to the music. The same when lighting a musical. When I light a musical, it almost doesn't matter what the choreographer does, because the choreographer listens to the music. So if I listen to the music and my lighting cue is always on the beat, it will always match the choreography. So the real magic and synergy happens often in theater between sound and lights together, working together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty special. I think that when I've had the chance, in particular lighting, I think for set and costumes, it's kind of a longer, it's more of a slow burn process. I have more to say about that later, but particularly with lighting, when the time is taken to really speak to each other, that's exactly when it happens. Like I know you and I have worked at that, like in the shows that we've done, that we've spent the time like, oh, how, and of course the listening at that moment is like, how long is that cue? Oh, when does the big bang come? Oh, 0.3 seconds after okay, blah, 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 and then we make it work, right? But that's a listening too, right? That's part of the listening process of design, is the listening to each other and the collaborative ways in which we can listen to each other. I find that most exciting because, it's interesting being a musician of sorts and working in theater, because the imperatives of theater are very different than the imperatives of music per se. I've worked a lot with composers, not all of them, many of them get it, but I've worked occasionally with composers who don't understand the ways in which we have to listen in theater and the ways in which we have to tell stories with sound in theater. It can be very trying and tricky. So that listening kind of it's a process of keeping me, I guess, on my toes, I suppose. Yeah.
We sort of are starting to lean into into two very fluid aspects of design here that evolve and shift almost like water in front of you, in contrast to the set, which can hold sort of an edge in some respects, right? And so just sort of listening to this conversation right here, you know, I feel my body being drawn into what's being said, as opposed to my head and shoulders and eyeballs and even ears, you know, like where it lands sort of down inside of. That's cool.
It's really unusual that there are no set and costume designers here, because if you look at the history of this award, it's only been one lighting designer to ever win. And have there been any sounds, people?
I don't.
No, there's
None.
only one finalist.
Yeah, and one
Yeah.
Alex. The last time I
Yeah.
was shortlisted, Alex. Yeah, and so there's only been one lighting designer and one final, and so it's been dominated by set and costume people, and there's none of them here now. So
Well, we do
that's-
set and costume as well.
well, yes, there was one puppeteer to win, Ronnie Burkett. Yeah,
Yes, one.
that's
oh,
right. You
one
guys do it all.
here.
Yes. So it's very unusual. But the other thing that I was going to say about what Deb said is that the other thing that is so true for all of us, I think, is that in theater, you have to work within the vision of the director. So I can have the most brilliant idea in the world, but if it doesn't fit with the aesthetic of this show, or if it doesn't fit with the vision of this director, then it's useless. It's completely useless. And so whatever we do, and that's sort of understanding the language of theater, we all have to be on the same page. And those are the shows that are really good, is when we are all on the same page. It doesn't matter what individual ideas we have. It doesn't matter. It only matters how it relates to the other design elements. It only matters how it relates to what the director is trying to do with the storytelling. And so that's another thing that's very specific about theater.
I was always under the assumption that the designer was the additional director. And in some ways, you know, you just sort of take your gloves off and get in there. But that designer should be thought of as an additional director, as opposed to a complement to it. We can say that because this is a different category.
I think that's a way of doing it, for sure. Director has a vision. We're going to get on page with that, or we're going to duke it out, see kind of where we land in the middle. I think that is a way. But I think for me, I've made tons of music and sound that I never would have made by myself. Like if somebody gave me $1 billion and said, go ahead and just make music for the rest of your life, almost none of that would have been the music that I had made for theater. And the only reason the music and the sound that I've made for theater has happened is because I've been in collaboration or in listening to these other things. The thing I was going to say about set and costume is it's a slow burn, because to me, like every show kind of has a secret. Very often for me, it lies in the set or it lies in the costume. And then, you know, the lighting comes in when we're in the theater, and then you start to respond in a kind of real-time way. But for me, like very often, like the way a set piece sounds or moves or a costume look, very often those things will reveal something to me about the sound world that the story needs. And so I feel like for me, the thing that I value about theater is the kind of cross-pollination between all the disciplines and how they speak to each other. And the models of how they speak to each other, I think, are there's so many, right? There's the director is just whatever the director says, or there's a kind of a confrontational thing sometimes, which has happened to all of us, I'm sure. But I think what's interesting to me is that the way the different storytellers in the room that are all working together to tell this one story can kind of feed each other. And I think that's why I love finding the secret, right? Like, oh, that set piece sounds like that. That's interesting. And then you go off on this path that you never would have gone down before. And I think that's why I feel so excited I continue to feel so excited about theater. It's just all the possibilities of how we can speak to each other. And yeah, sometimes, we've all had the gigs where you just and you have to do the thing. And sometimes you have the gig where you're fighting and you have to really push. And hopefully the majority of the ones you do are that kind of beautiful crosstalk that happens. A little bit utopian, I suppose, but I feel like it's something I like to strive for. I'm sure all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We talk sometimes about the different levels of resistance of a given medium. Like if between the concept in your mind and a blank piece of paper and a pencil, it's a pretty direct line. But if you're carving a piece of wood, there are a lot of obstacles that you have to navigate around, knots and splits and all that kind of thing. Oh, damn, there's not enough room for the ear. And those obstacles are what force you either towards catastrophe or surprise. And so I think it's it can be a helpful way to think as frustration mounts in the process of making a theater. It's like, well, I might just come up with something that I never saw coming, that I myself am not the whole and omnipotent creator of, but the medium enforced itself upon. It's the other people in the room forced themselves upon me, and now I've made a discovery.
I agree. I find that some of the best work I've ever done was when I was given a very challenging set that I look and I was like, how the hell am I going to like this? And then it forces you to creative solutions, and it forces you to do things that you would have never dreamt of doing in any other scenario. And often, so now I don't argue anymore, or I don't try to fight set designers. I'm like, bring it on. The more difficult set you give me, the more creative this process is going to end up being, I find.
So, Noyo, can you tell us about your practice?
Can I tell you my experience? Because I've been in Japan. I've been in Japan until age 30 something, and then moved to here in Canada and start work with Robert Page. And in Japan, as you know, everything ordered, everything on time, everything really organized. But first time I worked with Robert, it was a completely other world. So I was crying all the time. But I told my story to my mentor, who is lighting designer, big lighting designer in London, whose name is David Hersey. I was complain about how Canadians are chaotic and, and not organizing well. And anyway, but David told me, Sonoyo, the new star always born from chaos. So it was great answer for me, and I went through. Yeah, so since then, I'm not being afraid of chaos, any chaos in the theater. So and the best approach is to listen to the artistic proposal of collaborators. The theater is really anyway, the collective work, like a melting pot, and the work for costume, lighting, work for the costume, set design, choreograph everything, and the costume work for the actors, and then the melting each other is the way to create masterpiece. I believe so. Now I'm welcoming create the chaos. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about working with Robert Lepage, something? Because Robert strikes me as somebody who has very strong ideas about design. He is a bit of a designer himself. Is that easier or harder for you? Does he micromanage, or does he give you a lot of free range?
No, for me, he gave me really like a free space. So he's really appreciate the idea. That if you give new idea, he just give back more. I, like this kind of catchball he really loves. But if you cannot give good ball to him, he's gonna he's not get angry, never, but he got tired, he got bored, yeah, lose his curiosity. So that's why we need to give him gathering, like imaginary gathering. Yeah,
Because design is such a huge part of everything he does.
exactly. So we have to continue inspire him, you know. Yeah, his creative energy is enormous. Anyway, but we have to push his back to use our his like a imaginary, like a creativity. Yeah, not fighting with him. Dude, yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. It makes sense. Yeah.
So, Pete, Judd, P2, what are your thoughts on what do you want to share with the others about your unique practice?
Well, I've got something written. I'm just going to read it. I don't care. I'm just going to be not off the cuff because I fear chaos.
Do it.
And so yeah. So here it is. We are maybe a sort of an odd creature in the world of design. Often, although not always, we write, direct, design, and perform in our own shows, which means we are able to lead with design in the way that many theatrical projects might lead with text. Which is to say, we can start with a design concept and then build a scenery, like, oh wait, what if we open the curtains and there's just nothing but a huge eye? Or what if there were a puppet made of bubbles or sound, pure thought? The next question can be why, rather than the other way around. Design can grapple with unknowable impulses or speak to our complexities and our depths using its own language. At least, it's kind of delightful to imagine a show that placed absolute primacy on design over all other elements. Would a show like that work? Would it make sense? Would it be theater? Or is that where theater ends and installation or sculpture begins? Puppetry straddles that line. We are also producers of our own work, and our shows sometimes tour for many years, which means our designs can and do evolve as they age in response to the reactions of the audience, the to's and fro's of the tides of zeitgeist, or our own frenetic sense of relentless personal dissatisfaction. So, in other words, in a certain sense, to us, a good design is one that we haven't achieved yet, but might, if we live long enough to finally perfect something we've imperfectly started. There's a certain quality that we aim for in our designs that is maybe a bit ephemeral, so we'll attempt to describe it by way of an anecdote about the origin of the term marionette. Now, I don't know if this is common knowledge, or super fascinating, or even true, but apparently, in the Dark Ages, the church would bring out statues of the Virgin Mary to parade before the peasants, and they would hide a small monk inside a secret compartment in the wagon who could pull on secret strings going up inside the statue to make it move, as if by miracle, which would make the peasants shriek and moan and beseech the statue for mercy in return for their total obedience. These devices were called Little Marys, or marionettes. This shows a certain tendency in the art of puppetry, or maybe of theater itself, which is the use of performance to trick, to coerce, to manipulate, to keep your true motives hidden amongst an elite tribe, looking down from the stage upon an audience that receives the great wisdom of the artist, or is flabbergasted by their superhuman skills, or beauty, or celebrity. We, the old Shouts, are not burdened by any of those qualities, and so we like the opposite tendency, namely, where the artist and the audience strive for or feel a kind of camaraderie. In an old trout show, that means we tend to expose the puppeteer and take delight in showing the backstage on stage, highlight in every way we can that nobody is trying to fool anyone here. We're all in it together, by which we mean we all know we're pretending that this block of wood is not just a block of wood, but a little creature with hopes and dreams and fears just like us, even though that's a completely ridiculous thing to believe, even for an hour or two. And that absurdity is the key. To us, a good design makes the audience feel like we know it's all kind of a grand and magical joke, in the best sense of the word, and that they're in on the joke. We don't know anything more about how or why to live than anyone else in the room, and we think that feeling is what we're aiming for. A sense of mystery, confusion, wonder, whatever you want to call it, that we conjure together and share together. Theater should have a big heart that we're all welcome inside, even when it's sad, scary, or provocative. The core of the thing should be a kind of cosmic exuberance, the joy of being alive in the same place at the same time. I'm not saying we always achieve this objective, or even that we've always known enough to aim for it, but I think when our designs are at their best, that's what they feel. Or maybe what I'm really saying is that someday we Trouts would like to make a theater design that does feel it.
Oh, beautiful. That should be your acceptance speech when you win the Siminovitch.
Right. That's it.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to put your
gorgeous.
hand over the microphone as you talk.
There you go.
That's beautiful. I love that you highlight the trying, right? That we're trying to do this thing together in a space, like all of us together. We're trying that, and I'm big on failure. Like, I love failure. I talk about it all the time about how failure is a portal to something else. It's not an end point, right? And that like, I love that last statement that you said, that you're eventually that's going to happen. Maybe. It's gorgeous. I love it.
Don't you find you get just a little bit worried when it's all working?
Yeah.
You find there's
Oh yeah.
something not quite right here.
Time to look over your shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just too easy.
Yeah, it's nice to start with a bold mistake and then struggle and fight with that bold mistake and make efforts and efforts to correct it imperfectly every time. I think sometimes our shows or our puppets are built in this manner.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's opening night. Yeah. And that's as far as you got.
Well, the other thing that's great about you guys is that it's a real marriage of design and storytelling. And so when I started performing and writing, people always ask me, what's it like to move to the other side? And I said, I don't feel like it's a huge gap, because I always felt like part of the storytelling as the lighting designer. As the lighting designer, my job is to tell the story, to help tell the story. But you guys are it. You're the entire thing. You tell a story and you design, and it's where design and storytelling truly marry each other, is with what you guys do. Yeah.
I feel like you've done that. Like, How to Disappear Completely was exactly that. Like, you even talked about lighting design through the show in a way that was fascinating about lighting design, but also, obviously the show was potent as.
Yeah, but I wrote it
later.
with other people. I had a director, I had a projection designer, I had a sound designer, I had all these other people. Well, you guys do it all. You know what I mean?
I just imagined it was
Yeah.
all you.
No, it was a team. It was a team effort. Yeah.
We don't really do the lights and we don't do the sound.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So good to meet you all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give us your phone number?
You get your number.
We heavily direct those things, though.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna say. When if I can think of famous death puppet scenes, the set was part of the thing, right? The set was the show, and the puppets. It's all like felt like all one. Was there a separate set designer on that show?
It was us, yeah.
It was you guys, yeah.
The beautiful thing about, or one of the fun challenges that you get, and it's always there. It's like your Kinder Egg, and there's going to be a thing inside it, and that is, when are we going to find the set as a puppet itself, the entire entity? And we did this version of Pinocchio, and many people will remark about the show, but one remark that often comes is the moment that the set becomes the inside of the whale, when Geppetto and Pinocchio are inside the giant fish, and it breathes, and the whole set begins to move like the fish,
Yeah, it's an interesting opportunity in a way, being in this strange little niche of puppetry to do that. But but I think that many of you all do that. You do start with the design concept and build shows or performances and experiences, right? So in many ways, it's not unique what we're talking about.
I in my field, it's very, very difficult. I always wanted to do that. There is a choreographer, Russell Oliphant, in London, that works with a lighting designer in the room at all time. And so they create the lighting. But you have to be very rich to do that. No choreographer can afford to design, to work in a theater. And so that is my dream, and I've actually written grants towards that in the past, is to do a dance piece where I do the lighting first, and then the choreography comes, and then they're truly married, right? But in my field, it's just so expensive to be in a theater that we always come at the end. That's sort of the reality of lighting, yeah.
Maybe to wrap up this conversation, I was going to ask, now that you've had a chance a bit to get to know each other, what are your thoughts about the future of design in Canadian theater? But I'm curious about what you said, Itai, that is your dream. And I wonder, to the other finalists, do you have a dream for the future, a dream project that you would like to work on, or what would you like to see in the future?
I mean, time in theaters is, to echo what Itai was saying, is an amazing thing, because what I was saying when I was my sound wasn't working was that the puppet only exists as an intersection between light and the object, right? Like the audience only experiences what the light is striking, for instance. And so you kind of confuse yourself as an artist of whatever kind when you imagine the thing and build it. Here, I've got the puppet, and now it's going to be on stage, and then but it transforms utterly. It becomes a whole new thing when the light is on. And so, in a sense, the time that you spend sitting in your workshop is kind of imagining it. If you could extend that, and the more time we've got with all the bells and whistles, the more we're really sculpting with the actual medium that's in our fingers, which is, it's not set, costume, props, light, it's theater.
We're currently working on a show where the puppets are so small you can't actually see them. And we're calling it audio binoculars. So it's a really heavy sound design show, actually, where the sound is actually going to drive, for the most part, everything that is seen on the stage. So the lights will have to support this sort of imaginary world, almost. So it's kind of an interesting experiment, but it would be, we have, we're fortunate because we have the sound designer in the room for the whole process for this, but it would be amazing to have a lighting designer alongside for that entire process as well. That would be the pinnacle.
How about you, Deb?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's lots of projects I'd like to do, things that I think would be really fun and interesting. And, there's a bit of a vogue for the headphone show, right? And I think it would be really fun to design for that, a binaural show where the sound is treated or recorded in a way that is extremely realistic, so it feels like you're really hearing things. Lots of artists have been doing that for a while, and I think that would be really fun to do and very interesting. I think, what everybody said here about working together in a physical space with all the stuff, I think would make for tremendous work. And yeah, it's expensive and hard to afford. As for the future of theater, I'm not really sure, because that was one of the questions. Like, what do you see for the future of theater? It's a big thing. And to me, the thing that I love about theater is that it's an expression of this real human imperative to tell stories. I mentioned this by the way, all of you, you're going to have to do the interview. I had to just do mine today. Holy cow, was that stressful. But the filmmakers are amazing. They'll make you very, very comfortable. But one of the things that I kind of jotted down in my notes was that, the impulse to tell stories is just human. It's just who we are. And it's not, and the whole point of a story is to make sense of the world and to share that process of sense making with other people. And I said that in my interview, and I still really believe it. The future of theater is the continuation of honoring that imperative of us as people to make stories and to tell them with each other, not just to make them, but to share them with each other and to be together when we share them. So it's nothing new, but I do think that's the future, to just keep doing that. I don't think that's ever going to stop happening.
During Seneca's time, in the, 2nd century, theater was so unpopular that they flooded all the amphitheaters and they staged fights between wars because nobody wanted to watch theater anymore. And all the plays that he wrote, nobody did. And he felt like theater was dying. And so it feels like it's the only art form that's been on the verge of collapse for 3,000 years. And yet theater is still here and stronger than ever. And so every time we compete with something else, and when radio started, when TV started, now we're competing with live sports, we're competing with, those forces would always be there. Nothing will replace sitting in the dark and watching a performer doing a performance for you. You have to be there to enjoy it. And nothing is quite like it. And so I think as much as theater always feels like it's in dire straits, and certainly now coming back from the pandemic, a lot of theater companies feel that. A lot of people are really struggling financially. I have strong faith in the future of theater.
Thank you, Itai. So Nayo, any last thoughts?
Yeah, for lighting division, our technology is really advanced day by day, minutes by minutes. So I know it's gonna be really like a high tech something in the future. Like all light source is gonna be LED useful. So I don't want to I don't want to talk about technology aspect of lighting, but in general our backstage work. I hope, because it's really shame that I cannot recommend for the young generation that suspend their living by the theater work, not only as lighting design or like a set designer too, but I want to tell it's really a meaningful life if you work in the theater, so that's only I can tell right now. So I hope in the future more and more people recognize our work, theater design work, or like a theatrical work, and also need to not the enough financial aid for make a living. Yeah.
Thank you all for participating in this conversation. Thank you for giving us a little view into your worlds. And thank you for the great work. We're so pleased to be celebrating all that you've done and all that's coming in the future. For those of you watching, there will be a documentary about each of these exceptional artists uploaded to the Siminovitch Showcase website. Deb's done his first interview, and the others will follow. Also, those will be uploaded on December 2nd, and also on December 2nd, we will announce in the evening who will be the Siminovitch Prize laureate for 2024 and the Siminovitch Prize protege. Before closing, I'd just like to thank our partners at Power Corporation of Canada, who are the presenting partner of the Siminovitch Prize shortlist. Thank you all so much, and I will see you on December 2nd.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Nice to see you all.
Thank
See you
you.
all.
Great to
Lovely.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.